Hi, welcome to chapter 30. We're going to study a chromatic chord, the Neapolitan. Now, composers of the Neapolitan school in Naples often use the chord in operas. The minor mode first produced the Neapolitan. So like the fully diminished seventh chord, the Neapolitan chord is a chord associated with the minor mode. The chord is built on scale degree 2 of the scale. That's why we have the 2/6 chord here. Now, lowering or flattening scale degree 2 alters the quality of the chord built on scale degree 2 in a minor scale, producing the Neapolitan. So right now we have the regular scale degree 2, and if I lower it, the quality of the chord built on scale degree 2 in the minor is diminished. It's going to be this DFA. Now if I lower scale degree 2, I change it to, and it becomes a major chord. Now, the structure of a Neapolitan chord is it's a major chord built on the lowered scale degree 2 of a minor mode scale. And in fact, let me just show you something quickly here. Here you have the progression 1, 2, 5, 1. And to transform this 2 chord, 2/6, into a Neapolitan, I just need to do one thing. I add one flat right there to scale degree 2, and this chord changes then into Neapolitan 6. That's all there is to the Neapolitan chord. And we'll go through this in detail. But before we do that, as 2/6, this progression, if I can do this from memory, we'll have now as a Neapolitan, it would sound this way. And notice that has a very different quality as far as a chord goes. Now, as I said, to create the Neapolitan, we're going to lower or flatten scale degree 2, the root of the 2/6 of the 2 chord. In a major scale, if we wrote this progression in major, we would have to flatten scale degree 2 and scale degree 6. So you would need flat 6 and flat 2 in major to create the Neapolitan. Whereas 6 is already flattened in the minor, so all you need is the flat 2 to create the scale. Now, a Neapolitan in major uses mixture. The flat 6 is borrowed from the minor, and that's where the process of mixture comes in. Neapolitan and scale degrees. So here we go. You have root flat 2, third is 4, and the fifth is flat 6. And those are the scale degrees. Now as a function, the Neapolitan is a predominant chord in function, exactly the same as 2. That is, it is a chord that prepares the dominant in a cadence. Most often used in the minor mode, but it does appear frequently in the major mode as well. Predominants usually approach a root position 5 chord with scale degree 4 in the bass. So we've seen that before. If we can do it in this key, B flat, E flat, A flat, we would have C, D, E flat, F, up to G, which would be 1, and here we would have scale degree 4. That could be harmonized by 2/6 or 4 before heading to 5. Now, since predominants usually approach a root position 5 chord with scale degree 4 in the bass, the Neapolitan most commonly approaches 5 in first inversion or in the 6/3 position to maintain the bass line of scale degree 4 moving to 5. And hence, that's why when we add D flat, we call this the Neapolitan sixth, because the 6 refers to the first inversion of the chord, so scale degree 4 can approach the bass. The common approach of the Neapolitan to 5 is reflected in its shortcut name, Neapolitan 6. Now, common labels for the Neapolitan 6 are Neapolitan 6, flat 2, 6, or simply flat 2, reflect the chord structure. Now, common predominant functions for the Neapolitan. The Neapolitan 6 can move to 5. The Neapolitan 6 can also move to 5/4/2. And that would be an interesting change, because in 5/4/2, you would have scale degree 4 in the bass, and moving from a Neapolitan 6 to 5/4/2 would maintain the scale degree 4 in the bass. The Neapolitan 6 can also move to a cadential 6/4. Do you notice the gap up here between the D flat and the C, and the gap of a third between F and D in this key as the Neapolitan 6 moves to 5. Let's return this to just 5. We could fill those gaps in with passing notes. And if we put those passing notes on the beat, we would now have the cadential 6/4 moving to 5. The Neapolitan 6 can also move to 7/7, and 7/7 can go to 5, which would give us a chromatic baseline. So in that scenario, you would have the Neapolitan 6 followed by 7/7 of 5, which then would move to 5. So it would give us the chromatic baseline, scale degree 4, sharp 4, and 5. Let's do the standard outer voices. Now let's erase this first, then we'll start this over.
I moved the camera a bit just because
Okay.
it was like you're out of frame, but
All right. Now, besides the scale degree 4 moving to scale degree 5 in the bass, the Neapolitan has a standard soprano line that accompanies the bass. The standard soprano line comes from combining two standard voice leading models for the perfect authentic cadence. The soprano line has scale degree, so if we have these two scale degree patterns, 3-2-1 or 3-7-1. So we've learned about before we could have 3-2-1, or we could have the pattern 3-7-1, or even we can add in 3-2 and combine those, and 7-1. 3-2-7-1. And that's the standard voice leading pattern for the Neapolitan. So again, combining both voice leading patterns, 3-2-1 and 3-7-1 or 2-7-1, which produces the pattern 3-2-7-1, which is the standard soprano voice leading for the Neapolitan. So let's fill some of that out here. So I have 3, 2, 7, 1, and the progression 1, 2, 6, 5, 7 to 1. So we put those together and we have all the building blocks for the Neapolitan. So if we look at the pattern in minor, now we'll erase this and make it simpler. We'll put this into keyboard style, which will make it simpler to deal with. Okay, so here is the standard voice leading 1, 2, 6 to 5, 1 with our pattern 3, 2, 7, 1 in the upper voice, and it sounds like. And again, as I showed you in the beginning, once you have that standard pattern, simply flatten scale degree 2 to transform the 2 chord into the Neapolitan. So we add a flat there, change the name to Neapolitan 6 or to flat 2, 6 or flat 2. And we now have the Neapolitan chord and a different, completely different sound. So one more time without the Neapolitan. And here's with the Neapolitan. So this is the standard voice leading for the Neapolitan chord. Now let's look at the voice leading features. The bass voice, the third of the chord, or scale degree 4, is the only note to double in the Neapolitan. Doubling any other note will give you problems with parallels. So all other doublings will potentially lead to parallel fifths and octaves because they are active or tendency tones in the scale, especially flat 6. Scale degree flat 2 always moves to scale degree 7. In all other chords, chromatic motion such as 4 and sharp 4 or F to F sharp in C minor is kept in the same voice. The Neapolitan 6 always has a cross relation between scale degree 2 and flat 2. So right here, this chord simultaneously, we have flat 2 in the soprano and raised 2 in the tenor. This is a cross relation. Every other time we do this, the flat 2 would lead to the raised 2. The chromatic motion would be in the same voices. But one of the characteristic sounds of this chord is the dark kind of nature it produces with the cross relation. Now, here is the voice leading for the Neapolitan moving to 5/4-2. We talked about this as one of the possibilities earlier. So here, we'll change this to 5/4-2, and we simply put F in the bass, and then we have to change the resolution so that this will be to 1/6, and that's it. This is 5/4-2, and we can look at it. You notice it sounds much less resolved. And, as I said earlier, we can move this to a cadential 6/4 by adding passing notes in where there are leaps of the third. So here it is with the passings, with the cadential 6/4. And that's all we had to do. The scale degree 2 rather, goes to scale degree 7, and we put scale degree 1 as a passing one. And you notice this combines two of our other voice leading ideas we had, 3-2-1 and 1-7-1 as melodic fragments. So here's what it sounds like with the cadential 6/4. And to do this properly, I didn't do that there, we would do this. Now here's the voice leading for the Neapolitan 6, moving to 7/0-7 and then to 5, which is going to give us the chromatic bass line 4, sharp 4 to 5. So let's write this out. Erase all this. Now there's some interesting features. Remember, this, first of all, by putting 7 in here, 7/0-7 of 5, moving to 5, which then moves to 1, we eliminate the cross relation because it occurs a chord later. And here is what I told you before about chromatic motion. When it happens, it should happen in the same voice. So we have scale degree 4 to scale degree sharp 4 going to scale degree 5. Notice also how much this looks like the cadential 6/4 pattern. Because in the cadential 6/4, we filled in the gap between D flat and B with a C, and we filled in the gap between F and D with an E flat. Both of those are members of the 5/7 of 5, F sharp, A, C, and E flat. And notice, here's another example of chromatic motion. The flat 6 has to move to the raised 6 in 7/7 of 5 before it moves down. It could also stay flat 6. If it stayed flat 6, that would turn this chord into an augmented 6 chord, specifically a German 6, and we'll cover that actually in the next lesson. So here's what we have here. So you see it sounds much more highly chromatic. Now notice that the voice leading for the Neapolitan 6 moving to 7/0-7, as I said, is nearly identical for the Neapolitan 6 moving to the cadential 6/4. Scale degree 2 still moves to scale degree 1, scale degree 4 still moves to scale degree flat 3, scale degree flat 6 moves to 6 rather than directly to 5. Now, other voice leading patterns. Scale degree flat 2 does not have to appear in the soprano. When scale degree flat 2 is not in the soprano, parallel fifths and direct fifths are produced much more easily. So let's look at an example of this. Okay, so here, notice the direct fifth between the tenor and soprano moving from flat 6 to 5. So what I say, tenor, direct fifth between, notice the direct fifth between moving between the tenor and soprano, moving from flat 2/6 to 5. So where that is the A flat goes down to G, the F jumps down to the D, and we are approaching that fifth by a skip above and a step in the bottom, which makes it nearly sound like parallel fifths. So you hear that fifth as an accent. Now put the chords in open position by moving the tenor up an octave to avoid the direct fifth. So here's what we'll do in this. Okay, we'll erase that. And we'll have E flat, G, and G, and F, D flat, F, and A flat. And then G, D natural, and B natural, and then C, E, G. So now we can get rid of the direct fifth because we don't have a fifth. By simply moving that voice up an octave, we turn the fifth essentially into a fourth, and that's not a problem. Now, if scale degree 2 is not in the soprano, parallel fifths are especially common when the Neapolitan 6 moves to the cadential 6/4. So let's take a look at that. We have this, we can C, E, and G, and B, D, and F. So now we will have 6, 4, 5, 3. The fifth here moving to the diminished fifth, moving to that sixth. And that will essentially create the effect of parallel fifths. Plus the one at the very beginning too. You can hear that. We also have the one, well, that's in the next example. Okay. If I change this to C, E, G, like what you can see, you'd have parallel fifths all the way through this upper part. Okay. Now, this is what this is getting at. Scale degree flat 2 should never be below scale degree flat 6 when the Neapolitan 6 moves to the cadential 6/4. In other words, notice what it's saying. Scale degree flat 2 should never be below scale degree flat 6 when the Neapolitan moves to the cadential 6/4. Because there's no way not to produce parallel fifths. Here, scale degree flat 2 is in an inner voice. Here's scale degree flat 6. Both are active degrees now in this chord. Flat 6 has to go to 5. Flat 2 has to go to the one of the cadential 6/4 chords, and you're always going to have parallel fifths. So you almost can't really use the flat 2 in an inner voice or have it above scale degree 6 when you're moving to the cadential 6/4. We'll have to revert. We don't necessarily need to reverse those voices. We just need to put flat 6 below scale degree 2. Now similarly, parallel fifths are common in the progression Neapolitan 6 to 7, 7 to 5 when scale degree 2 is not in the soprano. So here we have 7, 0, 7 of 5 moving to 5, and we have parallel fifths created here between the A natural and E flat and the G to the D natural put in just for precaution because of that D flat. So it's very common. Again, the solution to get out of this is to reverse two of those voices to turn the parallel fifths into parallel fourths, which will be fine. Now, we can talk about other functions for flat 2. Flat 2 can be an embellishing a predominant chord. And we can tonicize flat 2 as well. And we can use modulation or use flat 2 to modulate. Now, we're not going to go through all of those here. They're all in the script for this, and I advise you to look at them because they have musical examples which will be hard to replicate on here so you can see them. But one thing I will talk about is tonicizing the flat 2 chord. And this could also work if we were thinking back to our sequences with fifths in the bass. And I'll just put one up here to think about this. So let's see how much we need. C and F. Okay. And B flat and E flat. And then A flat. And here's where we'll make a change. We'll put the F there. So now what I'm writing is the sequence bass we learned last time. 1, 4, flat 7, 3, and then 6. And 6, we are going to have go to 2 6 here, which then will go to 5, and then to 1. All right, so here's what I'm saying. In the sequence, 1, 4, flat 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. That's our descending fifth sequence. Do you notice in minor, flat 6, and I've changed it to 2 6, so we can make this a Neapolitan 6. The 6th chord that precedes this would be the dominant of this D flat major chord. If you were in the key of D flat, what would the dominant be? It would be A flat, C, E flat. And the 6th chord performs the same function in minor to the Neapolitan chord. So the 6th chord would actually become 5 of the Neapolitan 6 in minor. And that's how you can tonicize it. We could also make it a little more intriguing by using 5-4-2 of the Neapolitan 6, which would add G flat and then lead right to give us a dominant 7th chord of the Neapolitan. So the thing to remember is that if you want to tonicize the Neapolitan, the 6th chord of the minor key you're in will act as the dominant of the Neapolitan. And also remember that if you're in major and you're importing these chords, for the flat 2 chord you will have to import scale degree flat 6 from the minor, add flat 2 as a chromatic scale. And if you wanted to tonicize the Neapolitan in major, you would have to borrow for the 6th chord flat 6 and flat 3 in order to turn it into a major chord to be the dominant of the Neapolitan. All right, next time we'll study augmented 6 chords.